And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. I'd just like to take a second to have you examine how you feel about that phrase at the start of the talk, and then we'll compare how we feel about it at the end. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. So today I'm going to be talking about Revelation and looking at Revelation 17:6 in particular. And Revelation is a fundamentally esoteric text, comprised as it is of ciphers, riddles and chimeras, with its readings and its counter-readings informing traditions, eschatologies, fantasies and fanatics. According to Nestle Aland, which is the authoritative interlinear Greek-English version of the text, there are some 734 Old Testament allusions in Revelation. So what we're looking at is a paradigmatic holographic text which draws our attention to Daniel, Isaiah, Jeremiah and so forth, challenging us to plough through and revision our understanding of the Old Testament in terms of the soteriological and eschatological figure of Christ. Whereas in a magical reading, it's very much the figures of beast, dragon, whore, false prophet and antichrist as figures of rebellion who have fermented so much speculation, inversion, devotion and heresy. Often these magical readings have been somewhat rudimentary and based on outmoded sources and methods. So now in our unique moment, a bloody catastrophe on the event horizon of singularity and imminent human extinction, our histories can be sequenced back to their point of origin, projected forward as new revelations enter the canon, and experienced as imminent through the process of ritual. Truly, at this moment, our cup of knowledge runneth over. It's for these reasons that I reject both the unhistoricism that has characterised the feminist readings of the text and the myth of progress reading that makes figures such as Grant or Crowley authorities on the matter. Nor am I suggesting that the truth is something that resides in the fractured Greek of John, but John is where any exegetic process should begin. Revelation is the New Testament text with the most magical motifs. It draws on the same stock of images as the Greek magical papyri, Merkabah mysticism, Egyptian religion and Hellenism, as well as the well-known pharmakon, pharmakia, pharmakos. We find talking statues, oblique references to Hecate, the alpha-omega formula, the embedded use of the magical imperative, quickly, which we should all know from our Greek magical papyri, and the temporal destabilization of Christ's rival, who was and is not. On the basis of all this evidence, David Owen, who's the leading scholar in this, argues that Revelation is to be understood as an anti-magical polemic. That means that we have a text which is uniquely suited, not simply to inversion, when we accept the discourse of the enemy, but to a process of deconstruction in the manner of Jacques Derrida, to escape the necessarily reductive tyranny of the binary. The chimeric processes of John inevitably produce multiple readings. So my approach to the text is tripartite. I use the sources of modern biblical scholarship and historical research. I use the playful engagement of postmodernism whilst not accepting it as the only way. And I enact the ritual actions that produce revelation. So to give some context, Revelation is the work of John, who is a Palestinian Jew who is in exile on Patmos. His Greek is garbage, his grammar is poor, his punctuation is erratic, and the text, which is already elusive, becomes increasingly fraught or fascinating, if you like such challenges. Furthermore, when we look at Revelation 17, which is the textual unit we're looking at, it's probably the result of a complex redactional process. So John has repeatedly gone through the text. He hasn't had a psychedelic experience and just splurged it all out, which is what the psychedelic idiots often think. The images and the themes have been worked and reworked, whereas when we look at sources from the early 19th century, they see Revelation as a pastiche, as a combination of texts, which is the view that Crowley and D.H. Lawrence and Frederick Carter all had, but has been proved to be absolutely erroneous by the scholarship of Bousset and R.H. Charles. So the work of John is after the AD 70 destruction of the Second Temple. So composition date 95 to 96 CE, according to Irenaeus, and I think that's a good basis. We have a text that seems to be emerging from crisis and persecution, but when we look at the archaeological evidence, we discover that the persecution of the Christians was absolutely overstated by John and has been continually overstated by Christian propaganda. So the evidence for a Domitian persecution of Christians is very slight. John harks back to Nero and the idea of the returning Nero with this Antichrist figure, with Nero Revidivus. Revelation is a text of spiritual warfare, something we find in the works of Paul, with antecedents in Qumran, with composite whorephobic texts such as the wiles of the wicked woman. It's a God of justice and vengeance who we find in Revelation, promising salvation for the initiated few. The God of love, of the proverbial and ethical Jesus, is absolutely absent in the text. So let's look at the text here. And the part we want to look at is verse 4. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet woman, and decked in gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Now the part I've highlighted is the bit that people often look at for a description, and this is a very specific thing. It's actually an ekphrasis, which is a description of a static work of art. This is the piece that we're looking at here. This is a description of a static piece of work, and in this case, a specific statue. A statue of the goddess Dea Roma, which is made clearer if we look at Greek. And the woman, she, was having been clothed purple and scarlet, and having been gilded with gold. So this gives you the sense of the wooden statue that's been gilded with gold. In the Greek, it's quite lovely with ke chrisnomeni chrysia, golded with gold. So the description in Revelation is a picture of an idol, which makers of and worshippers of idols should take careful note of, as idolatry and magic are absolutely inseparable. Dea Roma was introduced by Hadrian, and she's a Greek goddess serving Roman ends. She was seen as largely benevolent throughout the empire. As Dio Chrysostom writes, that city was so superior to the rest of mankind in good fortune and power, has proved to be even more superior in fairness and benevolence, bestowing ungrudgingly both citizenship and legal rights and offices, believing no man of worth to be an alien, and at the same time safeguarding justice for all alike. So this is, without wishing to be an apologist for empire, this is largely seen as a positive goddess figure, whereas John's view of it is somewhat more like this. What have the Romans done for us? Fuck you, John. So most of the locations of the seven churches who John addresses at the start of Revelation have temples to Dea Roma. Babylon, as a code name for Rome, is absolutely secure, from 4 Ezra to Esdras to Baruch, and the instruction of the apocalyptic angel interpretes in Revelation 17:9 and 17:18. As destroyer of the Jerusalem temple in CE 70, Rome is repeating the actions of Nebuchadnezzar. Babylon is indisputably the city goddess in Anna Ishtar in her hypostasis as Rome. John has combined two sets of symbols, at least, to create his paragon of whoredom, mixing, shifting identity, and that sense of continual transformation is very much the nature of Babylon, which is why I asserted in the Red Goddess, she is a thoroughly modern goddess. She is constantly in transformation. So having identified Babylon as Rome securely, we can unlock another mystery, the name written upon her forehead, mystery. Now the city Rome had three names: Roma, the official name, Flora, the hieratic name, and her esoteric name, revelation of which was punishable by death. So, sorry about this, people, you're all going to die. The palindromic amor, as in the graffiti, Roma summus amor, Rome, supreme love. This is, again, quite a difficult piece of John's Greek due to his terrible punctuation. So, John is describing a particular statue in Rome, a statue of Dea Roma, which has been destroyed. So how did John see this? And how did John, being potentially blind, produce this ekphrasis? Well, here she is. And I can imagine John turning this coin in his blind fingers, slowly rubbing the figures away. If we look at the image, we can see Dea Roma. She's reclining on the seven hills of Rome, which is the seven heads of the beast. She's holding a ritual dagger, parazonium, which is sheathed on her thigh. She's wearing a Corinthian-crested Hellenic helmet. You can see Romulus and Remus, which again, there's a whore allusion here because Lupa, the she-wolf, Lupa is also Roman for prostitute. So there's a lot of potential allegorical teaching around this coin. Clearly, there's great magical uses for one of these. If you have one of these as a token, you can use it in ritual magic if you have a spare $19,000 to pick up one. However, there is iconographic continuity. And Dea Roma, that's an earlier one. It's an earlier Dea Roma, looking much more Greek. She's sitting on a pile of shields there. There's Dea Roma, the absolute image that was used for Britannia and her seven-sided coin. So if you're looking for some numismatic magic, which is an always important staple as a magician, then a 50p piece is one way in which to work. So, the cup, we notice, is absent in the coin, but present in the ekphrasis. We could argue that the absence of the cup signals its presence. And John continues his relentless dialectic, drawing together his Old and New Testament sources. The cup serves as a double symbol, communion with Christ, as in Matthew 20:22-23, the blood of Christ that was poured out for salvation, and the blood as the method of redemption. And there is another cup, which is argued against in Psalm 75, Proverbs 23, Corinthians 10, and the Odes of Solomon. So there's a good cup and a bad cup, to put it in a simple dialectic. Odes of Solomon is extremely useful for seeing this. So the blood of Christ is used for redemption, whereas the blood in the cup of Babylon maddens, showing that there's an entheogenic component to this work, given the extensive use of wine as a solvent in the ancient world, and its designation as krasi, mixed, and the anti-magic discourse I've indicated around pharmakia as poison, medicine, and magic. Therefore, work with Babylon is generally based around such a sorcerous sacrament. So as we've seen in Revelation 72, the cup is filled with the abominations of her fornication with the kings of the earth, with which she then intoxicates the people. This is the formula that we find in the Gnostic Mass, and is the basis of the 19th century spermagnostic esoteric reading via the priapism of Richard Payne Knight, Fraser's Golden Bough, and drawing on syncretic elements from Wolfram von Eschenbach and Wagner's Parsifal. However, when we look at Revelation, the reference is really to the Nicolaitans heresy and the adulterous eating of menstrual blood, and the Christians whose agape had got very much out of hand, all of that kissing on the mouth that Paul got a bit worried about. There's even suggestion that Jezebel, who figures in Revelation, was also a Nicolaitan. The group, the Nicolaitans, obviously is very ill-defined and relies on heresiologists like Irenaeus, but what I can propose is that the madness of the cup is a consistent menstrual motif of ritual impurity and contagion. So from our late esotericism, Babylon is drunk on the blood of the saints, and Crowley sees this and assumes that the blood of the saints must be in the cup, using this as his formula for the Holy Grail and his influential Liebe Heth. Crowley here is appealing to a perennial or a transcendental esoteric truth, which is both totalizing and imperialistic. It's bound very much to a 19th century reading of the text. The saints are read in a Rabelaisian or Sardian conceit, which has a certain elegancy and is indeed a ritual form that I've worked, but it's not what the text says. The text contains two symbolic ingredients, idolatry and immorality, which are particularly Enochic concerns. It categorically does not contain the blood of the saints. The blood of her cup, like that of witchcraft, is the othered blood, the blood of taboo, of dirt, disease, sickness, breeding war, murder, or more visually, that's the Christians for you. So, what's the Christian meaning of the blood of the saints if these later esotericists have got it wrong? The saints are specifically beheaded, pelikizo. They are cut off with an axe, as we see in Roman justice. Here's an image of a Roman magistrate with a fasces, and it's this beheading which ensures their millennial reign. John's probably thinking of Paul, who was beheaded by Nero, and a whole procession of headless ones whom the archaeological record has been unable to locate, despite digging up Christian graveyards. This also brings in the other decollation of John the Baptist and his unnamed daughter Herodias Salome as a proto-Babylon or a female saint for left-handed practice or performance, as in Alkistis' example. I'm going to run over slightly. Fuck you. So, John is proposing that the martyrs, literal witnesses of Christ, are a sacrificial offering who will resurrect in a millennial reign. They are athletes of death, whom Tertullian of Carthage wrote in his defense of the Christian faith, "We are not a new philosophy, but a divine revelation. That's why you can't exterminate us. The more you kill us, the more we are. The blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church." So the bones of the martyrs were used underneath the altars in the church. But Babylon is a great obscenity. She's drunk on their blood. She's a blood drinker, which is again part of the fallen angels trope. Their death isn't the obscenity for the jealous God. It's we're being directed to the special character of those who die, the initiates, the elect. So we're back to the true power and obscenity of this image. I am drunk on the blood of the saints, on the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. So, in the manner of Foucault or Bataille, I thought we should sit with this image for a little moment. These are 21 Coptic Christians who were beheaded by the Islamic State. This is the kind of feeling that John is drawing us towards when he's talking about the blood of the saints. And I hope this is something that makes you feel uncomfortable, because there's something obscene in this image. There's something deeply shocking that I feel is lost when we move to a safe sex magical reading and neglect the work of antinomian tantra. Because when the goddess appears to you laughing, with her mouth filled with blood, the illusion that she can be prettified, civilized, made part of respectable discourse, very quickly dissipates. So here we have another composite chimeric image in the manner of John, juxtaposing Guantanamo Bay with faceless holy warriors, interchanging Muslims for Christians, martyrdom for murder. It's ritual as propaganda, but it can't control the way in which we then read it. And so here's my position. The price of life is death, a ceaseless exchange. And this is the miracle of Mass, the ecstasy of community and self-sovereignty. We are all mired in blood. We are all drunk on blood, and witness that Babylon is constituted by this blood, created by the goods bought by the merchants, fashioned in the form of our desires. We are all Muslim and Christian, victim, martyr and fanatic, fascist and Jew, Christ and the devil. Blood can escape an essentializing discourse if we embrace an occult understanding of blood as endlessly transforming. John tries to fix obscenity and holiness as opposite, like sheep and goats. He argues for fixed categories of saint and whore, of hierarchical binaries. But in doing so, he is defeated by his own symbols, those of wine and blood, which cannot be divided. Blood is not only a cipher for wine, but for the transforming, miraculous sacrament of life itself. Blood is in flux, becoming sperm, kalas, menses, milk, flowers, not the property of any individual or cult, but of the primal ocean, of many rites, many readings, many sexualities, many people. As Jodorowsky observes, terrible things, beautiful things go together. One cannot have the sacred if one chooses to forgo the horror. The cost of incarnation is not the sexual guilt that informs the economy of Christianity, but the erotic pleroma of intoxication, love, blood, beauty and horror that we drink deeply of in communion with the full mystery of Babylon the Great.